Hello, hello. All right. For tonight's run, what we're going to do is we are going to keep on working on the animated scene that you saw getting set up and talked about in the previous two videos. And what I want to do is sprinkle a little extra on top, as if you guys do not have enough information, if you're just getting started with After Effects to pour through. But this is for some of you who maybe have touched After Effects before, and just a couple little tips and tricks for how you can add a little bit extra to your scenes. I always like to do this. As I mentioned before, After Effects is one of my favorite programs that's out there. I love to use it. It's made me a lot of money throughout my career, and these little extra tips really help your scenes to come to life even more. So if you're ever wondering, if you're focusing on 2D animation and you're thinking about, this After Effects stuff is kind of cool, but I don't really see how I could fit it into my pipeline or where it's really going to come into my production because I'm just a 2D animator. Well, this session tonight is for you. So we are going to go over keyframes. If you remember in that scene, there's some cars that are in there. So I'm just going to set up some quick keyframes and give you some more tips on keyframing within After Effects and show you some other just next level stuff that you can do with it and how you can get your camera moving quite a bit better. The next one I want to show you is something called the Puppet tool within After Effects. It's super easy and fast to get set up, and it allows you to be able to do some quick little motions within there. This is not ever really meant for full character animation. It's not really going to do that, but it can give some life to otherwise lifeless scenes. So if you've ever seen like a video game and all of a sudden they have a 2D character that appears and the hair is flowing in the wind and the flowers are kind of jittering back and forth and they're overlooking a cliff with a beautiful purple sunset. That is most likely the puppet tool within After Effects that they're using. Also, we're going to look at animated scaling. There's some explosions that I've got tucked away within this shot to be able to give it a little extra pizzazz that we're going to activate tonight and set off. And then I've also am going to show you guys how to be able to overlay video files within After Effects. We'll talk a little bit more about that. It's going to make more sense. But if you want to use, say, like animated, actual live footage of smoke that someone shot on a green screen or a black screen, this is the way to be able to drop those effect files into your shots. And then maybe at the end, we'll get into lights and shadow within After Effects. This is 2.5 3D. It's not true 3D, but it does still allow you to be able to add lights within your scene, and that can really pay off big time within any kind of 2D animated shot that you're doing. Whenever you see gosh, what are some shows that use it? There's an anime a couple years ago that was all about like fighting fires, and that one used the lights within After Effects to great effect with all the fire that was going on these 2D characters to be able to light them and give them a little bit more interest. Okay, so from the top here, the first thing that I want to talk to you guys about is keyframing. So in the previous video, we talked about how in After Effects, to be able to set a keyframe, what you're going to do is you're going to click on this stopwatch icon, and you can set keyframes on just about anything and everything within Adobe After Effects, stuff you would never even imagine to setting a keyframe on. But with these keyframes, when they come out of the box, you click on your stopwatch icon, and all of a sudden you're going to get a keyframe. So we clicked on the stopwatch, it turns blue. We get this gray triangle. When it's selected, it gets a blue outline, and that lets you know that you've got a keyframe. Anytime you move anything from that point forward, it's going to auto-generate a keyframe. So please keep that in mind. You can start to get a little bit messy with these keyframes if you're not careful. It's just a different working method to be aware of within After Effects. Now, right now, the out-of-the-box keyframes have got just a linear path to them. So they go from point A to point B without any kind of kerning, without any kind of ease in or ease out that's occurring within these frames. And that's it's okay. I mean, it gives you a very, very mechanical camera movement. And this is something that when I was in school, I wish the animation professor had talked a lot more about. So camera movements as an animator are so important. They really make your shots come to life. And taking some time as students and people we're all learning this stuff, but as you're continuing to grow and you're just getting started, maybe within your careers, thinking about the way that cameras move within a shot will help you dramatically in being aware of this long term. Let me explain. So, there are people out there right now that are going to school for film, and these film kids don't have to learn how to draw houses and buildings or people or how to animate facial expressions. They've got actors on camera and they've got real life locations to be able to do all that. So what they end up doing is focusing on shot composition, coloration, shadows, lighting. They focus on camera movement in a massive way. And when you get into a studio, there's a good chance that you're going to run into somebody who went to school for film instead of animation or motion graphics. And these guys are experts at using the camera. They are much, much better at it than animators typically are because we focus so much on character acting and performance. So, taking a little bit of time to think about these camera movements and think about them from a cinematic quality perspective and really thinking about your timing makes a world of difference. The way I always like to think about it is if you're working in 24 frames per second, a character walking is going to be about 24 frames, right? Or sorry, 12 frames. So half a second. That's a 4/4 rhythm. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is a syncopation. That timing and that rhythm, we are as humans very much in tune to. So this is why within this video, I don't have any of my camera movements starting until the first second. This gives our brains first 24 seconds. This gives our brains a little bit of time. Actually, we can probably scoot this back to the 12 frame mark. You can see your frame counter right here. So I know that I'm on frame 12, even if I'm zoomed all the way out. That helps quite a bit. So I'm going to move this and let's have it come to a rest at 14:12. And that's where my camera is going to stop now at the very end. So we're giving it a half a second. But this little half a second, this little bit of breath before the camera takes off and begins, and then as it comes to a rest at the end, gives your audience some time to be able to catch their breath and anticipate and take in what the scene is. Sometimes it's really difficult when you're watching a student animation. All of a sudden you hit play, the action begins, and then all of a sudden the character reaches its zenith or whatever, completes its action, and then bang, black screen, animation's over, on to the next thing. If you give some padding at the beginning and end, your audience will be able to appreciate and sort of mentally process what it is, the world that you just took them in, and they'll be a lot happier for it. Little pro tip there. Anywho, so these keyframes out of the box are extremely linear. There is no easing in or easing out that's going on with these. One of the quickest things that we can do within After Effects is left clicking and dragging within this keyframe region in my time slider over all of my keyframes. And I'm going to I'm right clicking over just one of them or just in the general area, or yeah, you got to right click over one of them. And we get some quick out of the box keyframe options here within After Effects. The one that you're going to be really interested in, and that's going to help your game when it comes to camera movement or any type of animation within After Effects, is one called Easy Ease. So by setting this Easy Ease, it is going to cause the keyframe path, let me show you, to do this. We get a slight little S curve that's appearing here. I don't know if you can see it. The blue line, it's pretty obvious, but we get a really elongated S curve that's now happening. And this is causing, between each one of our movements, the frame to ease into itself, speed up, and then ease back out as it starts to reach its next destination. In the previous video, I used the analogy of saying these keyframes are sort of like bus routes, right? So we're moving from point A from one bus station and then getting on and then getting off at bus B. And this would be like, without this, it's sort of like you sit down in the bus and all of a sudden the bus picks up and takes off immediately up to like 40 miles an hour. You're going to feel it. This allows a much more gradual increase in the speed that's realistic as if you were actually in a car. And it doesn't bring you to a slamming halt when you get to the next keyframe position. It sort of eases you into that next space. This is the graph editor within After Effects. This is where champions are made. So going in here and being able to edit out these keyframes is going to be a great tool and use for you as an animator. They've modified it slightly in recent versions to where you got to do something else to be able to actually start messing with any of these values. It doesn't quite work the same way that it used to. But anywho, yeah, you should be able to get two little bars to be able to manipulate these. There's one more step, but that's not the point. Anyways, right now, easing in and easing out is going to make your camera movement feel much more natural within the space. Here's another quick tip within After Effects. If you're working on an older laptop or a machine that maybe doesn't have as much processing power, that's okay. But you might run into something where this little green bar here that we can see within the slider, this is a RAM preview bar, and After Effects is constantly storing the file information each time you do anything in here, and it's rewriting that RAM preview. So sometimes you might see little black chunks get taken out of it. That's where it needs to be able to update the information. It needs to rewrite those frames so that you can get a smooth playback. If you ever run into something where you're running out of memory or After Effects is getting exceptionally slow, you're going to want to go down to Edit and then Purge all memory and disk cache. This sounds really scary, but it's only going to affect within After Effects. It's not going to do it to your entire computer. And so we're going to click on clear memory and disk cache. I've got 89.4 gigabytes that are in with my disk cache. So I'm going to go ahead and dump those right now. You'll see that that green bar, once this is complete, is going to disappear because it's removed all that cache information. Green bar is gone. And so now I just simply go through and I'm going to recache my scene. There it goes. So you can see the green bar growing across. It's creating a new cache file that's fresh, and I no longer have 89.4 gigabytes of used up RAM within my computer, and things are going to run a whole heck of a lot smoother. Golly, now I'm thinking of some extra things within the camera that I can show you guys tonight as well. So this is keyframing. I want to go through, trying to think. I do want to keyframe the cars moving through the shot, just real simply, just to show you guys what you can actually do with this. Remember, I'm using my null objects, which are the non-renderable objects, as a parent structure. So the nulls are the layers, the actual pictures within my After Effects scene are parented, they become children of this null object. So the null object is driving my big groups. The cool thing about the null objects is even though they're a master controller, within each one of these layers, I've still got the ability to be able to go back in and animate some of this stuff. So here is one of my cars. That one's all the way over here. Here's this car. So I'm going to open up with the gray arrow over on the left-hand side. I'm left clicking on it to be able to open it up, and I'm going to click on the gray arrow to the left of the transform. And now I can set a position. Remember, within After Effects, when they're turned on to 3D layers, you get X, Y, and Z. So X is always going to be left and right, moving horizontal. Y is going to be up and down with this car, and then Z is going to be backwards and forwards in space. What I want to do with my car for now, oh, there it goes, is let's have it start to drive into the scene. So I want it to be moving quite a bit faster than the rest of the shot. So at the very beginning, I'm going to leave this off the scene, off my shot. And as I move on through, let's go in and let's get that car. What I'm going to do is zoom out here, and I'm going to move the car all the way over to the other side. So it's going to race through my shot at some point. That should be far enough. And remember that After Effects auto keys things. So I've got one keyframe that I set, and just by moving it over, it's gone ahead and over here on the very far side created a new keyframe for itself. Now, let's see what this looks like when we hit play. There it goes. Car is moving on. And now all of a sudden that car has just become a central character within the shot. I don't think I want that quite to happen. So let's get it out of the scene just a little bit faster and see if that's going to happen. So by moving it over. Okay, cool. That works for me because it happens right before our zoom in. Pretty cool. And I've got the car moving at a consistent speed since it's coming into the shot, and it's already up to full speed. So we've got another car within my shot. I'm going to close this one out. You can see how fast that can be to be able to animate these vehicles. So that one is right here. So that's where I want this car to really come into the shot. So I'm just going to set a keyframe here, position. After here, I want it to, or excuse me, before, to come from off the scene. And then as it leaves, I want it to drive away from the scene. So with any luck, as we start to move back out, we're going to see that car move the other direction. Okay, so let's hit play. Check out what we did real quick just by setting those keyframes. Remember, I'm clicking on the stopwatch. Once I set my first keyframe, then I simply need to move it. I feel safe moving the X and Y there. No big deal. There's my other car. And you can see that it's sort of pausing for a second. So I'm going to delete out that center keyframe so it doesn't have that little bit of lag as it comes through. This is called working clean. There it goes. So that car is staying even across the way. That feels good to me. So we got one car going across, another car going in. Yeah, so that's one way that you can very quickly add a little bit of animation to these shots. This is working because it's a flat view of the car. The car is not moving forward towards the camera. If it's moving forward towards the camera, then we're going to end up seeing kind of the hood, the top of the car a little bit more. It just depends. We're going to see more of the angles. But from the side view, we can get away with that illusion and it'll work fine. Some other things that I want to show you guys within here, within the camera that you might want to consider is check this out. Like I said, we've got drop downs within After Effects. So I'm going to click on my camera layer. I'm left clicking on that. I'm going to open it up again with my triangle. And this is my transform. This is what I was working in before, the transform drop down. You can see right below there, there's another option for camera options. I haven't opened that one yet because it's a little bit overwhelming. But look, we've got a ton of different options to make this like a realistic camera. If you've ever used a Canon camera or taken any of them that use like an SD card, you've got a lot of the same options here. And so what I'm going to do is the first one I want to turn on that I think is fascinating is the depth of field. So I'm going to turn on the depth of field on this camera, and you can see that nothing is really happening right now when I turn on the depth of field. Nothing's occurred. To be able to see this, I need to go into my two views on this camera. Let's go on over here. And now I can mess with the focal distance. All right, so we're going to turn the focal distance down, and I'm going to turn my aperture up. There we go. So by turning the aperture up, it's going to make it more blurry. So this means that I need to change my focal distance, and I'm going to extend that out. And now all of a sudden, my what I'm trying to do is blur the elements within the foreground. There we go. So those are getting a little bit more blurry, aperture more. There it is. And now what's going to become visible, let's go with the focal distance even further out. There we go. So now the foreground elements, playing with the focal distance and the aperture, you can get the foreground elements to blur out, the center ground elements to stay in focus, and then we've got the far background elements that are a little bit out of focus as well. And this just helps to add to that depth within your shot a little bit more. There we go. So now the camera starts moving. So what I'm going to do is a focal shift as the camera starts to move in. And you can see just how blurry those telephone poles are getting. That looks absolutely great. That's what I want to occur so that it doesn't seem so razor sharp. And just because of this, I want to go in, and when my camera starts to move forward, all right, so as it starts to move forward, I'm going to mess with the focal and the aperture. We're going to come back to that. I'm just sort of setting reminders for myself with these two keyframes. If you don't want to make any changes and you want to set more keyframes, just click on these diamonds over to the left-hand side. And so as we get towards the center and the dinosaur starts to appear and wreak havoc on the city, then I want to change my focal distance to make sure that the dinosaur is in focus and some of these buildings go a little, or the cars and stuff. So the focus goes a little bit further back, and then I want it to return to the foreground as we move away. Yeah, it's gonna look cool. All right, just trust me on this. So for now, let's turn our dinosaur on, and there he is. So the dinosaur, right now, I want him to really appear as if like this is, someone just a bystander, filming something with their camera. So I'm going to hold down Shift and press the left arrow button to move him over very quickly. There he goes. All right, this is the very beginning of my animation. So let's give them a second to come into focus, and then all of a sudden I want them to zoom in. So at first, we're not going to be able to see the dinosaur. And this is a little bit of showmanship, right? So when you're working with these animations, any type of animation that you do, you don't want to lay all your cards on the table at first and say, all right, this is everything I got. Have a look at it. Your audience is going to get bored. Even if it's a short little 15-second explainer video, you want to be able to draw your audience in just a little bit. All right, so now all of a sudden, that's where the dinosaur starts to appear. So let's have him at first. That's where the camera starts moving, and then I want him to show up. So I'm going to take his position, and I'm going to transform him. All right, so there he goes. His position's there. His anchor point is right in the center. And as we start to zoom in, I want him to move over across the scene in sort of a big way. So I want him to go from here to there. And as he's going from one section to the next, we can we want to change the rack focus. It looks like he's in pretty good focus here. Let's go back to one view so I can see what's going on with him. He's fairly focused. I think we can mess with that aperture a little bit more now that I can actually see what's going on. So let's get him in perfect focus. So focal distance. Okay, that feels better. Things are becoming more blurry. He's nice and clean, and we're going to mess with the aperture as well. So hopefully these buildings towards the foreground start to get a little bit more blurry. Yeah, we're going to hold the focal distance there. There it is. So as we start to move in, things are going to get more blurry. There we go. And then we can zoom back out, and then they become more focused on something else. All right, so that's working pretty good for me. We get our dinosaur in there animated. Now that we've got our dinosaur moving from left to right, let's do some fun things with him. So in the middle here, it's time to introduce you guys to the puppet tool. The puppet tool is a very, very quick and easy way to get some simple animations within your scenes. Within After Effects, you can see that there's this little thumbtack icon. And the thumbtack icon actually does a lot more than you think it's going to do. It's called the Puppet Position Pin Tool. Big name, big results. And the way that this works is when you start left clicking, you're going to see these yellow little dots show up. And the yellow dots are going to appear in a hierarchy. If you create too many yellow dots, it becomes a big mess to try and deal with these frames. So what I want to do is I'm going to create one of them sort of right at the top of the character, another one in the middle of the character, and then one that's going to handle just the base of the character. So we're just going to keep this really simple with 3 bones. Now, when we create that, yeah, good time to save. um, it is going to auto key out those bones. And what's just happened is within the dropdown, it's an effect. The puppet tool is considered an effect within After Effects. When we open up that dropdown, we're going to see the puppet tool, but we don't see those keyframes quite yet. There it is. The keyframes are just this one little dot. The keyframes are contained inside of the mesh. We got the density, the expansion, but it's the deform, another dropdown that we're interested in. And we still can't see those keyframes. So those keyframes are living inside of the puppet pin 1, 2, and 3. And you can see how this can become a little bit overwhelming. So now, as we start to move our character through the scene, he's frozen in his first position at first. With the puppet tool, it works really well for me to be able to Let me grab my pen tool, click off of this, and now I'm going to grab my puppet tool and I'm going to move my character around. So we've got one keyframe. Let's go in and I'm going to move this one just a little bit more. And now let's grab puppet tool 3, kind of like him up like that. There he goes. So he's up, and now we want him to go back down really fast. Close the mouth. That works. Let's close the mouth a little bit quicker. And let's do something over here with the head. So to keep things from floating around or getting your timing off, I like to just go ahead and keep my puppet pins all together. Some people might say you should do it a little bit differently, but you can see how it's starting to warp the character a little bit as well. So let's go in, bring him back to his original position and move him forward there. So he's going to lean forward. There he goes. So the mouth shuts, and we're going to keep him frozen there for just a second. And let's give him one more little movement towards the end of the animation. Where's my pen? All right, pen is hiding somewhere. There he goes. And then the last one, let's bring him forward. Okay, so we'll get a little bit more motion out of the character. So there it is, our 2D character. Now all of a sudden he chomps, he moves around, he's got a little bit more life to him, and we're going to just copy and paste, bring him back to his original position. I'm copying and pasting, hitting Control-C, Control-V to be able to keep him just frozen for a second before we move him back to his original spot. Okay, you can see him warping there at the end, and as he starts to appear, we're going to animate in and out of the character. So let's go ahead and bring him forward. Maybe down at first, and now he's going to open up. Let's bring him up a little bit higher. Mouth open still, body forward. There you go. So he kind of jumps and then he comes back down. That looks good to me. Mouth is opening and closing, and we've got some good life going on with this character. Just that quick. Puppet tool, really, really fast way to be able to go in and set some keyframe information within your shots and within your scenes. There he goes. Looks like he's sucking on his thumb for right now. That's okay. There we go. Pretty good. Like I said, this works well to have characters' hair blow in the breeze. It works good to make the flowers move. If you've got a tree that you want some kind of rustling in the wind to occur, the puppet tool is a fun thing to be able to explore. Do not try and do complex animations with the puppet tool. It's going to drive you crazy. And the methodology that I just showed you for starting from your frozen space and then animating, in and out of that. Don't forget about your held frames. If it just stays moving the entire time, it feels a little weird. A couple movements, freeze them, and then have them move again will work pretty well for you. All right, so the next stuff I want to show you in here is going through, and we've got some smoke that's going to appear. And for the smoke that's appearing, I want to change my anchor point because I think with the smoke, yeah, let's try that with the puppet tool as well. Within After Effects, you've got the ability to be able to change all of your layer styles, and you can add glows, you can add blend modes, all kinds of stuff in here. We're gonna try a hard light on the smoke. There it is. So now it's a little bit more see-through. That's absolutely what we're looking for here. And as we get into the shot, let's bring some of that smoke up, and I want it to be growing just a little bit. So once again, I'm going to use the puppet tool on the smoke. 1, 2, and 3. And I've set my keyframe, so that's going to be the plume that starts. I'm going to pull this down at first. Center my mesh. That's 2.5 seconds. I'm probably going to pull those down a little bit further. Let's pull this guy down and this dude down. All right, so you can see that's wibbly wobbling over there to the side. I'm going to open up my deform, puppet tool 1, 2, and 3. Let's make the smoke nice and slow because it's supposed to be massive. And there's some other fun stuff that I can do as well. So if I grab my pen tool within After Effects with one of my layers selected, I can create a mask. So I'm just going to create a mask real fast. So I'm just drawing in this mask. All right. And with that mask created, what I'm going to do next, the mask comes up within After Effects as a mask layer. I'm going to open up my mask layer. I'm going to change it from add over to subtract. Now all of a sudden I can't see the top of the smoke. That's exactly what I want to occur. And next up, I'm going to go to my mask path. Let's animate that, and I'm going to create a feather on it as well. All right. So as the smoke starts to grow up here, I want it to get revealed gradually and slowly over the course of the animation. There we go. So the smoke at first is going to start to show up, and then it grows. And towards the end of the animation, we want this smoke to continue to grow. So let's go back up to my puppet tool, and I'm just going to have it grow ever so slightly up. There we go. And moving up just a little bit more. Like I said, puppet tool is great for quick little things, and that is, yeah, starting to reveal the smoke in a little bit more polite way than the way it was showing up just a second ago. That's the mask tool. You can animate your path within the mask tool. You can also add feathering to it, and changing it from add mask to subtract works pretty good. So now we can see that smoke is starting to appear within the shot. It's looking good. I think the smoke is on the same layer as the dinosaur right now, so I'm not too crazy about that, but that's okay. Or sorry, same position in space. I would go back and change that. Anywho, so we've got another smoke within this shot. Let's see where that one's going to appear at. Oh, there it is. Yeah, so it looks like we've got a big sort of explosion that I was imagining within this region. So yeah, there he is. He's stepping through, and let's let's have him jump up out of the smoke. For this one, we're going to animate it in a different way. I'm going to grab this little coupon looking icon. That's how we centered our object before. But this time I'm changing my anchor point. That's how we centered the null object in the previous video. This time I'm changing my anchor point. You can see the null object. It's a little bit difficult to see. Orange isn't going to make it any easier. Red. Okay. Now it's a red box. Okay. And what I'm essentially doing is moving my anchor point so that it's down at the base of this image file. And by doing that, that allows me to be able to go in here and I can start setting some keyframes. I'm going to set this guy again to blend mode. I think hard light worked pretty good a second ago. We can also mess with the opacity just a little bit if it feels too bright. So I'm bringing it down to 50% opacity. I'm going to set a keyframe for the scale, turn off the universal scaling. So that's the infinity symbol right there. By clicking that off, it allows me to be able to scale in a particular position. Remember, the leftmost one is going to be X, Y, and Z is how these three go, the order that these three go. X is going to be moving to the left and the right. Y is going to be moving up and down, and then Z is back in space. For the scale, what I want this smoke to do is collapse down at first to absolutely nothing. So I'm just going to scale it down. I've got my keyframe, and as we move forward through the shot, I want that smoke to gradually start to appear. So I'm going to animate it up and out of my scene. All righty, so that's pretty good, and let's have it slow up towards the very end, and I'm going to scale this up just even higher. And it's still pretty bright, so I'm going to bring it down to 35% opacity. And this layering of the two different effects is going to work or two different smoke plumes is going to work pretty well. So there's my first one. He's starting to show up. You can see that that's not quite as nice as I'd like for it to be. Once it gets a little bit more scaled up, it feels better. But now we've got the smoke that's starting to appear, and then we've got the big one that's showing up also after it. So I think it works okay. We're starting to get some layering going on with the dinosaur. That's cool for me. And now we've got the fire. Oh my God, look at that. So with the fire, this fire needs to spread. Let's try doing the I can't remember what I put into the scene. I made this file like a year ago, so these have been turned off for quite some time. Go ahead and save. by hitting Control S and save frequently. So what I'm going to do with the fire that's within this shot is I am going to, again, use my mask tool. So I've got my layer selected, and I'm going to just animate sort of some of these flames like this. Okay. Wow, the city is really, really growing on fire. Um, so I'm just gonna cover up everything, and the next thing that I'm gonna do is I can still, with my mask, animate the mask path. For this part, I'm going to mess with the mask feather. It should come towards the center. Nope, mask feather, let's leave that at 0. What I want to mess with now is the mask expansion. All right, there it goes. So the mask expansion, I'm causing the fire to go towards the center of itself right now. So I'm going to key that out towards the beginning of my animation. So all of a sudden he walks through, the smoke is starting to occur, the fire is going to get bigger and start to, grow within the city. Towards the end of the animation, I think that's where it needs to be. Maybe when we zoom back out, it's getting at close to its zenith. But here we go. So we're going to bring that mask expansion back down to 0, and we're going to bring it forward just a little bit more. All right, there we go. And let's see how that looks. So as the character is going through, the smoke is starting to grow, and that's working pretty well. It's okay. Let's see if we can't make this effect feel a little bit better with the puppet tool, or we could do a mesh warp on here. So we also have some effects, and under distort, there should be a warp. So if we use this mesh warp, this can give me a pretty good result. So that's under the effects dropdown, distort, mesh warp. And when you click on an effect from the dropdown or from the right-hand side, your effects are going to show up in the left over here. Don't worry, you've got the little exit button just like you have up here if you double-click on a layer to be able to exit out of it. And we're going to turn the columns, or the rows and columns, down to like 3 so that it's not overly complicated for us to animate with this. And now let's go to a keyframe for the distort mesh. So I've just keyed that out, and we're going to leave this one at its original position as well. So under the effects dropdown, mesh warp, and let's go to distort mesh. I know this all feels a little bit fast and confusing. I'm just trying to show you guys a lot of stuff that we can create, along the way. So distort mesh, grab it. And just like if you ever use the mesh warp within Photoshop, it can be a bit of a nightmare with the way that it sort of has that natural wave and curvature to it. Over here, pull these guys down and in. All right, so there's one warp. And now I want to just have it play off in a different direction. Oops, don't want to grab the entire thing. And I'm just trying to give this a little bit more interest as it starts to build and grow within the shot. There we go. So the fire is really low. It's starting to grow up and build, but it's got a little bit more movement to it now. And as it's starting to appear, let's just go ahead and keep some of this a little bit lower and moving it around. Same thing for this. Oops. Click back on my distort mesh to be able to get back into it if you happen to click off. And I'm going to pull this guy down just a little bit further. So now we're getting very quickly some quick keyframe information within our shot. Pull him in a little bit further and this guy in a little bit further too. Okay, so that should give us quite a bit more animation within our mesh warp within that fire. So it feels a little bit more alive. And then suddenly, we're taking some very boring effects like a still picture of smoke, a cheesy, Illustrator version of some fire, and we're trying to give it a little bit more interest here with the way that we're having it show up into the scene. So now those flames are starting to show up. They've got some movement to them. That's feeling good to me. You can see that my playback is starting to slow down quite a bit as I add more stuff to my shot. All right, let's let that load all the way through, and then we'll have a look at what the playback looks like. There we go. Smoke's appearing, fire's growing. It's feeling pretty good. It's getting bigger, and oh my gosh, it's a raging fire within the city. And now we can do, a couple more distorts towards the end, just to be able to give it a little bit more movement. And I'm just copying and pasting some of the previous frames just to keep it moving around. And let's keep it moving right up until the end. Control V. All right, oh, that's too much. Let's go with the first one again. Cool. All right, so now we've got some movement on the mesh warp. Let's save this out. And there are some explosions that I created. There it is, explosion one, explosion, wow, explosion two. We're going to skip the explosions for now. I feel like the fire is sort of naturally occurring, and I'm much more interested in showing you guys how to be able to get some of those live video footage into the shot. I feel like we're getting a little bit long on this demo here. So to get live footage or special effects shots that someone actually, did in a safe studio environment, we can right click within our project window over here on the left hand side and go to import file. And then from there, if you happen to click on and search in YouTube for Spark Impact Black Screen or Smoke Black Screen or Smoke Green Screen or something like that, you'll find a lot of short videos within YouTube of these particular elements. Go where you may on the internet to be able to download those videos from YouTube. They also sell, once you get in the professional realm, nice, really nice high resolution effects packs. So what I've just had to do to remind you, I've got it turned on. Sometimes these videos come with sound. Make sure you turn that sound off. It's usually some kind of really annoying, like heavy metal guitar riff or something. But so here we go. We're going to scale up this explosion just so that you guys can see it. And right now it's not set to a 3D layer. So as I move my shot, it's just going to stay stationary right in the middle the entire time because it's not reacting to the camera. You can see those sparks start to show up there just for a second. That's the part that we want. And so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to turn it on to a 3D layer. When I turn it on to a 3D layer, I'm going to go to my two views, and we can see that it's starting right in its original position. I don't want that to happen. I'm going to push it back so that it's on the same plane as the other elements that are in focus. Don't forget to move it. Still need to position it in the 2.5 3D space. I'm going to hit rotate, X, Y, and Z. So X, nope, that's going back. Y, that's left and right. Z, there we go. That's the winner. And let's rotate this guy up. There it is. Got my sparks showing up, and I've got a kitty cat that is deciding to be naughty and bother me right now while I'm showing you guys this stuff. Okay, so right now it is on a black screen. We don't want it to be on a black screen. There's a couple ways that we can do this. We can go to Effect, Keying, and linear color key works fine, or key light 1.2. I'll show you that one. That is going to register what the screen color is, and it should remove everything else besides the key color, the screen color that you have there. That's one way to do it. I'm going to hit Control Z, because if you are lucky enough just to have a shot, the effects panel stays up. If you're lucky enough to have a shot with just a black background, it's not a big deal for you to go in and set this layer to layer style or blending mode. Thank you. Screen. And now all of a sudden, there it is. Your black has disappeared. Your color is still there. And now we've got these little sparks that are starting to show up. So you can do a bunch of these little spark patterns here. One of the things that I like to do is cut them down so I know where they're actually showing up at. Here at the beginning of the animation, nothing is occurring. So I'm going to hit Control-Shift-D with the layer selected on my keyboard. That's going to create a cut into two different layers. And now I'm panning forward. Now the spark really starts to appear. Get a couple more little quick sparks, and I think this video is done. All right, so there we go. Now we've got a spark. Let's go back to where it's actually showing up at. And we're going to put it somewhere right around the dinosaur. I'm going to create another one. Let's offset it. And I want that one to occur somewhere else. And this works great in conjunction with those 2D explosion pics that I did just a moment ago. There it goes. We got some more sparks that are showing up, and it'll help to justify the flames within this shot. All righty, let's check it out. So now we've got they're going to be really fast. Watch for them. There they go. Quick little sparks. Quick little sparks are showing up. Another little quick little spark as the guy is starting to create his chaos within the city. And now some more quick little sparks that are showing up, and that'll help to justify the fire that is slowly growing within our city scene. Okay, you get the idea. So by setting black screen to any kind of black screen effects file, you turn off the sound on and off. To right-clicking on the layer, going to blending mode and screen, it will get rid of the black. If you've got a green screen, you're going to use the effects keying, and you can do linear color key or key light 1.2. Either one of those will work well for you, and it'll drop out any colored background that you might have within your shot. Other stuff that I want to show you guys right at the end here, you can place lights within your scenes. So now that we've got the shot turned on, I'm going to insert a light. We can give that light a color. We've got a nice blue sky, so white light is always going to be boring. If it's sunlight, give it a little bit of a yellow tint. If it's an interior light, or if it's moonlight, you can make it blue. And let's go in and we're going to create we've got a couple different options for the lights. Spotlight is the one out of the box that you're going to be able to use that's going to make the most sense. Ambient light is going to light your entire scene and allows you to be able to control the overall brightness within your scene. Let's go ahead and create a spotlight and see what happens. All right, look how much that changed the entire color of my shot. So let's drag that spotlight up to the very top here so that we can see where we're working with it. Over top of the camera, let's collapse the camera down. I'm going to go back into my two views and we'll be able to see the spotlight that's showing up. So there is my spotlight within my shot right now. So what I want to do is I'm going to pull this over, and you can see how when I pull it over that the entire shot starts to become really dark and it becomes silhouetted, and it's only hitting what's actually going to get lit up. So in this case, I'm going to bring it up a little bit higher. And now with the spotlight, it's a little bit difficult to see. We can move it up in the Y. You have to see that things start to get a little bit darker there as I move it up, right? Because it's not hitting those objects anymore. And I'm going to mess with the rotation of the light. So we had X, Y. I want it to go nice and down on my entire shot. There we go. And let's push this guy back a little bit more, so that he starts to actually light the telephone poles as well. There it is. And now I can mess with the light option. So it's a spotlight. I can increase the intensity of the light. You can see how that starts to burn out. Ugh, really hurt the viewer's eyes. And I know that you guys worked hard on your shots, so you probably don't want your light to totally change your colors of your scene too much. We can increase the cone angle as well. Let's go to 50%. That's too dark. All right, let's give it a little bit more coloration here, a little bit more orange to it. Yep. Cone angle, intensity. Ooh, that is way too yellow. So there we go. That's nicer. Nicer on the eyes. And then from there, you can mess with keyframing out any of this stuff. So you could keyframe out the color of your light. You can keyframe the intensity. You can keyframe the cone angle, the position. Like I said, you can keyframe everything within After Effects. So now you can also cause that light to cast shadows within After Effects. Now, this gets a little bit trickier because you have to go into each one of your layers and decide on material options. It's accepting lights, but you get to decide if it's going to cast shadows. So now we're telling it that this particular layer, that's the cars in the foreground, we've got the poles, that they are allowed to be able to cast shadows within the rest of the scene. And this can give you a nice cardboard cutout effect within your shot. It looks like it's doing something a little bit strange there. I think I've got a couple more things within the telephone pole layer. Let's see. All right, so let's get back out. Yeah, those telephone poles aren't getting the light, so let's pull the light out. Z rotation, position, X, Y, and Z. Go into my 2 view, that allowed me to be able to see it a little bit better. Ah, there it is. All right, so now we got and you can see the trash cans that are starting to cast the shadow there, which is pretty interesting. So we got a shadow being cast on the trash cans. That's not exactly what I want. So we can mess with the shadow darkness as well. So let's turn down the shadow darkness to like 50%. I think that's going to look a little bit nicer on this shot. Let's try turning back on the cast shadows on the telephone poles. That looks pretty bizarre because they shouldn't be casting all the way back within the shot, but let's leave it in, see where it goes. We got the car that is got its cast shadows on. Let's turn the other car and let's just go all the way with this. Cast shadows on. So now we've got sort of a South Park cutout looking thing that's happening here. And this is only possible because we've got a light within my shot and within my scene. I'm really curious to see what the turning on the city's shadows does. There it is. That's what I wanted. All right. We got the explosion. We're not using those. Fired. We don't want that to have shadow. Dinosaur, he definitely needs some shadow. Okay. Material options. Turn on the shadow. Okay. Dinosaur looks absolutely ridiculous. And the big city in the background to keep our shadow pass going. Let's go with cast shadows. It looks horrible. You can also turn on the metallicness of these objects for how much they're reflecting. You can decide how diffuse they are, so you can make them brighter within the scene. It really does allow you to be able to mess with absolutely everything. Except shadows on, light transmission. We're gonna brighten those up just a little bit. I feel like that's looking a little bit cheesy. And let's check it out. So now, as we start to play, we'll see those shadows that are working well within my shot. We got some cast shadow that's happening on my dinosaur within the background, and it's starting to flatten out my scene. But we still have that sense of perspective that's occurring within there. Some of that smoke is really getting blown out. I'm not sure if I turned it up to be more metallic or what ended up happening there, but towards the end, it looks like we need to animate our lights because they're becoming just that other street light isn't actually showing up. So I'm going to take my light to get this effect to work the entire time, all the way back up to my lights, and I'm going to take my position. I like where it's at the beginning and the rotations. Now let's, as we scroll over, I want the shadow just to move a little bit with my scene and there it is. Okay. There we go. And now as we get to the very back of my shot where it becomes, I'm just going to try and keep my, that's becoming a little bit too intense, so we can't move it that much. Maybe it needs to stay stationary and we just mess with the Y rotation. Okay, let's try that. There it is. So the last telephone pole now is staying in perspective. Okay, so let's have a look. And you can see at the beginning here, that rotation is not helping me in any way, shape, or form. So let's go in and let's get the Y rotation way back over here on this keyframe. There's my rotation. It's straight on. And let's have a look at what's going on within the shot. All right, so now we should be able to see our shadow paths start to change and move around a little bit. And see that's keeping with the dinosaur there, looking pretty good. Dinosaur chomps, we've got our little explosions. And now the shadow pass is going to move across the back side of them. It's not overly noticeable, but yeah, I think it gives a funky little look to this overall shot. So that is a lot of stuff that you can stack up within After Effects. We're going to bring this thing to a close. We talked about keyframes, the puppet tool, animated scaling, overlaying video files, lights and shadows, and how to be able to turn those on within After Effects. Go back, cut into the section that you're actually interested in if you want to try any of this stuff. We've also got masking in there that you can use to great effect for all kinds of reveals and interesting things. I hope that this gives you a better idea of some of the capabilities that After Effects has. To this day, I still feel like I'm just skimming the surface with this program, and there's a whole host of plugins that different studios are going to use that are going to totally change your workflow within it, but it's always a cool program to go through and use. So thank you so much for checking this out this evening, and I hope that you have a great night.